You may have been seeing some headlines about legislators being called back to Frankfort to deal with Kentucky's pension issue the week before Christmas. And if you haven't been paying that close of attention, here's some things you may have missed. And I know some of this sounds boring, so stick with me. Recently, the Kentucky Supreme Court overturned a bill passed by the 2018 General Assembly that made changes to the retirement systems, mainly the one that covers Kentucky teachers. Now, what the bill did was it primarily moved new teachers that would be hired after the bill passed into a different kind of retirement system, more like a 401k that employees of private businesses often have. So why was it overturned? Well, there's a lot of legislative tactics that have been used in General Assemblies. One of those tactics is to strip the language of a bill that's far enough along in the legislative process and replace it with the language of the bill you want to pass. And that's what they did. Now, while this isn't an uncommon practice and it's been done numerous times over decades by previous legislatures, this is the first time we've had a Republican-controlled legislature and a Democratic Attorney General. So he sued them. And because the language in the bill did not meet the constitutional requirements of the legislative process, it was ruled unconstitutional, not because of the changes in the bill. Still hanging in there? Good. So, where does this leave us without pension reforms? Now, some of you without pensions may be saying to yourself, who cares? Reform them or don't, but don't raise my taxes to deal with it. And some of you with pensions are probably saying, don't touch the systems, just put more money in and they'll be fine. But here's the thing. Kentucky is in a shocking amount of debt because of the pension systems. And of course, there's a lot of finger pointing and blaming that goes on about whose fault it is and how we got here. But none of that matters. We're in it. And the reality is, at last estimate, every man, woman, and child in Kentucky, all 4.4 million of us, would have to pay more than $10,000 each to pay off this debt. That's pretty jarring. And in a speech on the floor on the last night of the special session, which I'm getting to, I promise, House Speaker David Osborne highlighted the fact that with more than $3 billion going to the pension systems per year, we're paying more for pensions than we are on every road and bridge in Kentucky. I'll let that sink in. But this isn't to say that we shouldn't be making these pension payments. We absolutely should, and we have to. It's the law, and it's a promise that's been made to retired teachers and state workers. But because the bill was overturned, the governor and legislative leaders have said that credit rating agencies have already indicated they'll downgrade Kentucky's bond rating again if pension reforms aren't tackled. Our bond rating is already incredibly low, and it makes things like funding projects and other initiatives very difficult and much more costly. So that brings us to the special session. Told you I'd get there. Governor Bevin held his press conference on Monday to call legislators back to Frankfort a week before Christmas, just 5 days after the Supreme Court had overturned the bill. So the question is, why now? Well, Bevin in his press conference talked a lot about the fact that the credit rating agencies would again downgrade our bond rating. And behind the scenes, there's been a lot of talk about wanting to pass pension reforms again before the 2019 session when new members will be sworn in who may not be as familiar with the issue. But 24 hours after the special session had begun, it became clear that they didn't have the votes to pass Bevin's proposal that he had put forward that stripped a lot of the provisions out of their original pension bill, and there were still a lot of questions about passing the same bill again. So they adjourned Tuesday without a solution. Now, finally, what does this mean? Well, I can tell you this. It's very unlikely that this pension issue is going anywhere. The financial issues and the instability the pension debt presents will continue to force less spending on things like education, economic development, and other government services, and could even potentially lead to higher taxes in order to pay for this. This issue impacts every single Kentuckian, and while more and more money has been put toward the systems in the last two budgets by the legislature and the governor, money alone isn't going to fix this issue, and there's not an overnight fix. So the governor and legislative leaders said on Monday, while they couldn't come to a solution this time, they are committed to continuing to work on the pension issue. Whether that means in the 2019 session, another special session, or later down the road, only time will tell. But we haven't seen the last of the pension reform issue. You can learn more about the special session and the pension reform issue on kychamberbottomline.com. Just search pensions.